All right, guys, what is up? Lou here. So, obviously, today's whole topic is conditioning and jiu-jitsu, right? Hence the title for humans, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and money. Number one, I cannot take credit for this graphic. Nikki made it, so thank her. I am smart in some areas and dumb in others. But let's get right into this, right? So, one of the biggest things you guys understand is everybody, regardless of what their sport is, I could actually replace this with any sport. And this thing right here will tell you how the conditioning um, should be sought out or thought about towards that sport. Because the one thing that we are is all human, and everybody likes to talk about money. So one of the things that I learned a long time ago is how to tie the energy systems to money, right? So let's start on the bottom, and it's aerobic, right? That's just your salary, regardless if you show up to work or not. I mean, depending on the company you work for, you should be always making that base salary, right? And basically, aerobic just means that it's when the lungs turn on, and that's 3 minutes. And think if you've ever been running, and then you're breathing heavy, and then you get that second wind, and then it like evens out. That's exactly when the aerobic system turns on, right? That means with oxygen, higher oxygen demand. That also means that you're starting to use fat as fuel or triglycerides in the bloodstream. It's basically always available to us, and this should be where most of your training year round should encompass about 65, 75% of this, right? That's a big understanding. Is most of your training is done between here and here, right? And basically you earn this. So if we move on from the salary and move on to cash, moolah, right? That basically means 30 seconds to 3 minutes of work, right? And all this means is like the imposed demand. So think you're running on a treadmill for 3 minutes, or you're running on a treadmill for 30 seconds, or something like that. You could replace that treadmill with anything. It's also with oxygen, but we're using glucose or carbohydrate that's in the bloodstream as and there's a whole cellular process that happens to anybody that took chemistries and biology and stuff. Moderate in intensity, right? This is lower intensity. This is a little bit higher intensity. And again, I can't reiterate that these two are most of training, right? You throughout the year, regardless if you're training for a competition coming up or not, this is where you spend most of the training, right? And then the last one is our credit. And in essence, it's basically 10 seconds or less, no oxygen involved. It's already what's readily available in cells, ATP, CP. And think about explosive power. For those of us that do striking as well, think about hard power rounds on a bag, stuff like that, right? And as we know, as adults, it can get you in trouble, right? Yeah, we all have credit. We should have a decent credit score, hopefully. But the credit could get you in trouble, right? So meaning if you do too much explosive work, think about explosive repeats. Like if I ask you to do squat jumps or jump as high as you can for 20 seconds straight, that burning sensation, that's the supply and demand, right? What's going on in the body. And that's a pretty important thing to understand. And this is why I say this stuff is earned, right? But again, most of your training is here. And then the biggest thing is all your systems are always on. They're just on at different percentages. As the demand increases, each one picks up or dials down, right? So when we're just hanging out, we're kind of always in here. When we pick up whatever we're doing, this is when the lungs start to turn on, and then obviously if we get more explosive, this is when this fuel source gets to be used. And again, majority of your training should be done in aerobic, basically your salary, and lactic, which is your cash. Now this could also be used, or this thought process could be used to build a nutrition program as well, right? And that's totally down the road, one of the topics I'll cover for later on. But hopefully this made sense to you. Just remember, just three, right? And just tie it that way: salary, cash, credit, and basically it's timeline dependent, right? In the rest of the article, I'll get into specifics of how you could tie this all together with your training, and then like a frequently asked questions part, which will be common questions that people ask, and I have some good answers for them.